Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this video, we are looking at Moogerfoogers. This seemed like a day that was never going to come, and it also seemed like a day that should have happened a very long time ago. And I think one should always wonder why it took so long. Why is it that one of the pioneers, and probably the single most pivotal pioneer of electronic music, should find it so hard to transition to the new methods? Has always been a real head scratcher for me, and they've struggled with it all along, and those signs, those symptoms are still here, and I think it's a crying shame. Obviously I'm going to be swings and roundabouts on these fellas that have now appeared finally in a VST form. VST3, fair enough. Obviously, that is the forward-moving method. If you're doing new stuff, you can't do 2.4s, so it is a 3, hence my being in Reaper. Moog, but these are called Moogerfoogers as far as I'm aware, not Moogerfoogers, so we will just generally use the populist name Moog. Moog 1, the original Moog, the old Bobster. You know, this is the thing, that the catalyst for so many things. You know, there was Keith of the Long Hair Emerson and his box of wires, and then there was Gary Newman dreaming of boxes of wires, and that put wind in a lot of sails, myself included. So they were the aspirational thing. I spent decades thinking, oh, when I finally get a Moog, then I will have landed. And I did get a Moog. I got a Slim Fatty, and it didn't last long with me. Now, nothing to do with the sound, but all to do with its usability. It was, in terms of using it with a DAW, well, just a pig. There was some software that came with it, a kind of a librarian type thing. You could twist the knobs and they would actually control the hardware box. But oh my God, it was so 1997, and this was in 2013. And back then I'm thinking, why is it that this company is struggling so much? Now, I know their whole thing is hardware. Fair enough. In which case, don't step into the DAW sphere at all. But they have. But for some bizarre reason, they've done it so poorly, but they're not the only people to do that. You know, we look at when Gibson bought Opcode, as in Opcode Vision, back in 97 or something or other, and they had no idea what to do with this thing, and within a very short period of time, they had killed one of the best sequencers, DAWs, one of the most forward progressive. They'd killed it within a year or so, and I know it was a little troubled, but we have a history of hardware companies really not knowing what to do with electronics. Why don't they hire actual people who've proven to know what to do in this world? Go figure. It's a problem here. It's not a killer, but it is a PITA. So Moog 2 was launched around these Moogerfoogers, which were these stomp pedals. They weren't really in a position to go making big synths. So they used their bits and pieces, their technology, some old components, and put these things together, which drew a different crowd, but they drew in a new crowd. I always, as I said, found the name interminably stupid, but I think it appealed to that crowd. It was a choppity, wackety, mess things up kind of a crowd. Fair enough. They carried themselves and rebooted the company. So that is cool. Don't really need to introduce you much more than that, because if you don't know who Moog are, none of this excites you in the slightest. If you do, well, you probably don't need my introduction. I've said Keith Emerson, I've said Gary Newman, what more do you want to hear? So we then go, okay, let's have a look at the price, because that's the main thing. Looking at the website, yeah, you can do that. All right, $249 US. You can only buy them as a bundle. At least I have not seen any option for purchasing these solo, which I think is, again, a misstep. It smells to me more like marketing, and unfortunately, that's the thing that puts me off this more than anything else. A, that yes, you can't just buy one of them, and B, that there's a smells like Moog Spirit thing kind of going on. Now, if we take these units and separate them, there's one they say you get for free. That's the saturation unit. Doesn't do an awful lot, fair enough. But we'll ignore that one for the moment. But if we do the math, then US 35.57, give or take a decimal place each, which seems pretty fair. So $40 to $50 Australian per unit. Some of them are definitely going to be worth that. I mean, hands down, the ring modulator, I think, is worth that. But do I want to spend 250 US on all of these? Sorry, no, I don't. So it's off-putting. I'm going to bypass the whole thing from that alone. Why do that? Maybe this will publish whilst it's in the intro of 150 or 149 US dollars. But this is the, again, smells like Moog Spirit kind of thing, and then they're not the only people doing this. But you've just told us that the real price of the package is 150. Didn't do the math, but what's the price? If these really are that great and they're really worth $250, why are you not selling them for $250 from the get-go? It seems to me what you're saying to us is the real price is 150, and that every year come Black Friday or whatever, they're going to be 150 bucks. I don't know. I'm not keen on this, and Moog are not the only people doing it, and maybe they feel it's the only thing they can do, but for a company who have generally gone their own way and sort of said, bugger you, this is what we do, kind of like the Harley Davidson of electronic music world, I think these are missteps. It's going to be up to you as to whether you see the value in them. It's not for me to tell you one way or another. They are an interesting product that in some ways are great, in other ways are flawed, if not perhaps terminally annoying. Let's start taking a little bit of a look, but I got to run something by you first. Here is a sound. Let's just turn on the saturator. Now, it's hard to tell one from another. They put that in small print. Do you notice what I notice? It just gets louder. Now, that to me doesn't seem like a particularly wise thing. Now, for Moog to not realise this, why are they doing this? Just going, oh, well, we'll just make it louder. Okay, they are, in theory, perhaps adding some drive. They tell us they're not, although these knobs are far too hard to read. They look pretty, but they're far too hard to read. But they tell us they're not actually adding drive, or at least according to their knob, and yet they're adding drive. So there's this immediate sound goodification on them if we just turn on these two. And I can't help but think, Porky Pie. We need to dial this back a bit to get an even Steven. So, pick a note. Now, in terms of what's it doing, well, not a lot. That's not to say that it's bad, particularly up in the highs. I can't hear it well on these things at all. There was a sense of, okay, that was pretty cool. If we click the little, almost invisible link button, I'm not hearing a lot. Now, maybe I'm not using this right, but I'm not hearing a lot. There is a nice feature in that you can add in noise. You can choose between white or red. You can filter the noise that's there. And you can dial in a little bit. And now if you've watched the video just released on noise, then that's a cool thing. It's not solid state, as in it doesn't sit there when there's no sound coming in. It is envelope followed. Now, that swings and roundabouts. It's good in the sense that you don't always want the noise there, and definitely through the 70s we would have been putting a noise gate on this sucker for all the noise that it's adding. So we wouldn't want to sit there hearing that noise shh all the way through. We would have a gate on it, so it would switch in and out. Want to know that? Sit there, listen closely to Kraftwerk's The Man Machine, and you will hear noise coming in and out with the gates. So that's fine. Wouldn't mind having a little button that allowed us to just bypass that, so you just set a level. Not the end of the world, but because there's lots of other ways to add noise to things, but it does add a little something. So in terms of that, it's good. It does do its job. In terms of how this is really adding a lot of value, to be honest, I didn't get it. Now, I did not RTFM as a general rule, because that's what I have as my general rule. It's not about me reading the manuals and giving you a complete in-depth blow-by-blow. There's always somebody else who's done that, or the manufacturer. I did think the manuals that I did look at for the CV thing, I had to look at that. That did not disclose itself very easily at all, but what was there was good, and I was pleased to see it. But we've got this situation where we need to not allow ourselves to be fooled in the first place with levels, because it is a little bit of a furphy that is going on here. But the saturator, okay, I haven't battle tested it. It hasn't gone in a mix. It's just gone here. But is the saturator going to add some kind of amazing fullness? Well, let's turn it on here and on the drums. Let's pull those levels back a bit. I think it does add something. So the saturators, yes, they do seem to work. Again, not battle tested. They say that you get this free if you buy all the other stuff. Okay, great, good on them. It's fine, it's there. Just watch out for the rookie thing of the fact that it adds a whole pile of level. Now let's look at the other thing that they've got. I mentioned this just before. There's a CV system. Now, this is interesting, and it's a challenging thing because they're trying to implement it across VST. I'm used to Reason, where we've got special CV jacks. It's all built into the system. So Moog here had to come up with a way to say, okay, how can we do the CV jack thing, bearing in mind that VST really doesn't have such a thing. I assume maybe it's a VST3 thing, but they're recognizing that there are other Moogerfoogers in the environment, as in any other launched devices, and then allowing you to piggyback from them. Clever in its own way, but flawed. So to access CV, we open here or click on one of these, and then we've got these CV jacks in which we could plug, well, a plug. We click on them, and yeah, look, this is confusing. It's, well, initially it says none. Okay, fair enough, we got nothing. We can choose between bipolar or unipolar. Okay, that's great. We can add a DC offset, RTFM on that one. You can bring in an external side chain, a key, something from somewhere else. Brilliant, good on you. But then we got all this. This is gibberish. Now, they had to try to work out, how do we identify another device that's in? Well, they did come up with a solution. So if I open this one, and in the manual it says on the back. This doesn't have a back. VSTs don't have a back. So it took me a couple of goes to realize, on the back of the pedal. Oh, okay, where you plug stuff in. It gives each instance that you load a 4-character name. Okay, that's kind of clever in the sense that now from here, DCIF, I can find DCIF, okay, there, and now it's... You can see it's affecting the drive. We can choose how much it does that from here. Okay, all kind of cool. Watch this. If I disable this device, not here, but here, it stops. If I disable the device here, it keeps running. Now, maybe that's something to do with the VST STK, that when something is stopped, then all processing ceases to exist and therefore it can't happen, but it's frustrating. It wasn't in the RTFM that you needed to keep this active. Maybe that's too self-evident, but I don't think it should be. I think that should be, if that's a limit of the SDK, I think they probably should say, this is going to happen. So if you don't want it doing stuff, but you want to use as LFO, then deactivize it with the stomp switch. Otherwise, it's just going to stop doing stuff, and that's going to be frustrating. But why assign a random number? That to me is just infuriating, because it's random, it's gibberish. Why not allow me to type in something here? 4 digits. Doesn't make sense. We're talking about software here, and we're talking about a little database that's obviously getting saved somewhere inside my DAW program, because these don't carry themselves from one project to another. They do tell us that. They say these are DAW specific, these connections and these names, fair enough. But why not let me actually put in a name that I can say Space Synth 101 delay. SS delay. So when I open this, I can go look through these intelligently rather than looking at MS-107 at UST. And it's just like, WTF. It's poorly thought through, and that matches what I found with the Slim Fatty interface with a DAW experience back in 2013. Some clever idea to say, hey, we can steal that from another instance of our plugins. Kudos, cool, clever. Not unique, but well done. But then the implementation gets clunky. It does show you what's happening. Okay, that's pretty nice, but it's easier to see this than it is to see the actual knob itself, to see where the setting is. There's so much shine on this that finding the actual setting number is, well, somewhere near impossible. So the CV system exists. It is pretty cool. When we reopen the plugin, it will have closed itself down, so it doesn't remember. So it's a little bit of an afterthought and not as well put together as I would have hoped. At this point, we will go through the good and bad, then we will take a little bit of a look at each of the devices. We're not going to dig in too deep because you need to sit there and try them, and this is going to be 4 hours if we do that. So what do I think is good and bad about these across the board? Well, obviously, the Moog name is a thing that we've got to take into account. The fact that I've put it before the fact that they sound good means that I am concerned that we are trading more on our name than our ability. They do generally sound good. Do they sound significantly better than any other plugin? Well, I don't think anything in Dawville sounds significantly better than anything else. There are some that sound poor, but that's just because they have a terrible architecture. These have a fine architecture because Bobster and his buddies have been doing this since the dawn of time, give or take. So their architecture is okay, at least. The classic sound style, so as in they sound, or their architecture is very 70s, so the feel of them is very 70s. That's both good and bad. In terms of ease of use, you have to adjust to, oh, that's how they work. It can be a little bit of a, if you are very used to modern, clean, clear sorts of devices. But that's not a bad thing. That's probably what most people are looking for. There are some limits and problems because of that. As I've said, the manuals are pretty good. I'd like to put CV in the good, but it's a little too broken there at the same time. In terms of limits or problems, now I did write that they were distorty. Now that was probably more of a Reason thing. I haven't noticed that here in Reaper. Now that is merely because Reason tends to run things a little hotter. No reason that they shouldn't, whereas a lot of other DAWs have decided that they're going to run at minus 18 dB. So Reason, Europa and Thor were tending to feed the Moogie-Foogies a bit more signal than they wanted. Turned down what was being fed into them and they were fine. So if you find that they are a bit distorty, well, that's the nature of the beast, but they do seem to be a little minus 18 dB obsessed. That's just the way they work. Now, let's be honest here, they're not true Moog sound. If you look online, you will find quite a few places where people are comparing, quite scientifically as much as one can in these situations, a real Moogerfooger with its VST version, and you're getting radically different sounds, especially on, I think it was FreqBox, or where was it, Murph? I don't know, they've all got such silly names. But the one that does, that makes things sound nasty, maybe that's the FreqBox. They were radically different in sound. They weren't the same device at all. They might have the same knobs and look the same, but they weren't the same device. Nor does this make me immediately think, oh, wow, I've got a Mini in my DAW. But that doesn't make them bad. It just means that you do need to be aware that you are buying a Moog name and some Moog styling. There is some Moog thinkfulness inside these, but they are not going to sound immediately like a Moog. They are, however, going to get you a lot closer than using many other devices simply because their thinking is that of the 70s. As I said, it's a classic sound style, it's a classic architecture style. Therefore, if you plug into 123, you're more likely to come out sounding 1979 than you are if you plug into, 123, say, Reason devices. Fair enough. If that's what you're looking for and you don't know how to do it another way, then I guess it's winning for you. And as I've pointed out, you seem to only be able to buy them as a bundle, not as individuals, and that would be, if it's an all or nothing, then I have to be nothing. I'm sorry. There are some things I would like in here. All right, so let's look at some of the devices individually. We have a synth. This is our donor. Let's open up its filter. Is that saturator still on? Yes, it is. Let's get him out of the game. Same with the delay. We'll try and do these one by one. We have the filter. Is this going to turn my sound into a mini Moog? Oddly, it defaults to 2-pole. The minis are famous for their 4-pole, so why not default to that? Okay. I'm not feeling the love. Okay, that's nice. But let's for a moment just pop him out. One thing with this, which is true to the devices of the day, is that, well, it says 18K. I think it might be a little less. So they are naturally going to be a lot warmer. If you're bass obsessed, you're going to see that as straight away a good thing and getting rid of DAW sound, simply because it's rolled off, it's abandoned, it's lost all of the squeaky stuff right up on the top of your spectrum analyzer. It is gone. So that makes for a warmer sound. But there's nothing to stop us from doing that somewhere else. But yeah, they've rolled that into here, and okay, that gets you there. that does sound nice. It is rich and creamy. Let's whack this out, and assuming these numbers are anywhere near relevant. That is obviously different. As to which is better, well, that's going to come down to what you want. I would often find it frustrating that it tops out at the filter obviously still being down. Okay. We can use the 2-pole version, which is a little looser. This will, and watch your ears, howl. It'll self-oscillate with little to no encouragement. Okay, that's cool. They're famous for doing that, and it does it sort of fairly nicely. So the extra drive doesn't seem to change things an awful lot. But the filter sweeps, well, they are nice. Let's run the sequence. I'm leaving the drums in because it's all very... I'll stop that. I'll leave the drums in because it's all very well to listen to sounds on their own, but we're musicians, we make music that goes in a mix. While I know many of us obsess about our sounds in solo, it's really very silly because ultimately it's in a mix. Now, you're probably noticing that we're missing something, and that is filter movement. There is no way to envelope this. And before someone wants to scream at me, yes, there is this. But it's just a follower, which is level follow. So there isn't really an easy way to bring in an envelope from somewhere. Obviously, when this becomes native in Reason, it will be easier. And if we were in Bitwig, then it would be easier because we could pull an envelope, something that would output from somewhere. Let's say there was a CV out for this envelope here. We could pull that out and fire that to here, which will work in monophonic mode, but not very well in polyphonic mode. It will not at all. You can use it paraphonic. Maybe Bitwig has, and they probably do to be very fair, within their grid, the ability, because they've got polyphonic systems, but I haven't used that. But this is going to be a limit for most people in their DAWs, the ability to actually make this filter move for doing anything other than level-based things. So that's nice. And obviously sounds cooler. But it's going to take some effort to be able to use this with an actual filter envelope, because there isn't an easy way to do that. If we were to be using the side chains, then I would have to feed it another synth that had a different envelope shape. Let's see what... But getting there has kind of ruined the sound that we were looking for or had in the first place. So modulation is a little bit of a problem if you're trying to say, okay, I'm going to replace the filter in my synth with the Moog Amazefulness. It's a nice enough filter. Does it immediately make me want to take my pants off and run around waving them over my head? I'm sorry, but no, it's just not getting me there, and that's a disappointment. Maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm too quick. Oh, before people get too upset, yes, there are presets, but okay, whatever. I guess they show things you can do with it. So filter, we can use... All right, we'll leave this in, actually, to be fair. phaser. Yeah, you can sync it to BPM if you want to do that, but I would question why you'd want to do that if you want to sound 70s. So, your call, but... may need to... I honestly didn't really work out the difference between a mount, which seems to be depth, and sweep. Again, remember, I don't RTFM deliberately. It doesn't make itself clear. No doubt it is clear inside the manual. But does it sound good? Well, definitely yes, good enough. So we can put ourselves into Jarre territory. Fairly easily. So I can hear some drive in here, but that's probably going to sound good in speakers. So in terms of what's it adding, well, it's doing what we would really probably expect that it is going to do. It's quite nice emulation of that. It's not really small stone, but of that style of phaser. So yes, it's nice enough. Is it sort of run out, get super excited? Yeah, probably not. Cluster Flux. Okay, let's get that one off. This one... Okay, this is the flanger and chorus. Again, stupid naming. Just kind of making it hard to try to appear to be too clever. Okay, I feel like you're out clevering yourself, but whatever. Something I noticed with a lot of these, and fair enough, they want to be able to do out their wacky sounds, is that there is not a lot of range in which to do subtle. Again, it's software. If you want to give us stupid ranges, brilliant, go for it. There's a lot of sense in doing that kind of stuff. But why not give us a little button to limit the range so that I can maybe, you know, have the sweep of this much and then the sweep of this much. And that way it allows me to have more fine control. Otherwise I feel like, oh, it's just too hard. It is easier to move a knob infinitesimal amounts in the real world, provided it's a good knob, but it is harder in software, even with shift buttons and things like that. The shift button does slow it down, I think, but it's just harder, and it's a lack of thought through. And yes, there might be, but it's going to ruin our, you know, like a classic look. And I was like, you know, if we're only buying this for the look of them, then I don't know. I'm here to make music. The chorus. Definitely can sound nice. It's not going to be everything for everybody. It's definitely not a Juno chorus. But good, great. So if we pop this in here. In terms of embiggening, it's doing that nicely, and there's a certain amount of versatility in there with a more rational interface. I would be happy with the sound of that as, you know, another chorus flavor, especially a retro type chorus flavor. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. I quite like the device. Not enough to make me want to spend $250, but I quite like the device. We've then got the delay. Ooh, acid test here. It's got a short and a long button. Oh my god, it's actually possible. So what I'm talking about with other things, it's actually possible. It has modulation, short, allows us to get pretty close. It doesn't give us any kind of idea of what this is. Again, maybe on the old RTFM it's there. You can BPM sync, but you know I'm never going to do that. In terms of using it as a reverb, well, it's probably a little shy of that, but so it is capable of doing the longer tap type stuff. We can pop it into ping pong, so if we go back to that's giving us more of the reverby sort of thing. Tone, legacy, analog, or modern. It gives us 3 tone options, but why couldn't you just give us a nice knob? I mean, we know you're actually kind of all right at filters, so why not let us have some? It would be way cooler, dudes. Timing strict or loose. Again, didn't RTFM on this, but I get the feeling that the timing becomes far less accurate. Why didn't you default to loose? Maybe just because they're worried that people will be upset, especially when they BPM the silly thing. But that I do like. It loosens things up. LFO, polarity, bipolar, unipolar. Okay, you're giving us a choice. Default to bipolar. That's, well, the most sensible mode. Bypass or spillover. Didn't RTFM on that one. That's potentially interesting. Feedback mode, legacy or modern. Again, if we're buying this for legacy type thinking, why would we not default? Because it seems to be far more the style of the thing. This one, I honestly didn't notice what that did. So, no idea there. It just frustrates me that you can't change the tone color of these for Moog to give us something that may be accurate to this device. But why not simply say, hey, this is software. We could invert a couple of our uber famous, coolest in the world filters in the middle of this feedback path. So not only can we have it wonking around, but we can have it filtering around as well. It seems kooky or unthought through to have not done it. But as a delay goes, yeah, you've got to get used to it, but I guess you kind of do with any delay unit. I think it's nice. So that's some of them. And now we'll move across to the drums. Actually, I will just tidy that up a little bit. Now, drums. Classic MT Power drum kit. We all know that it's not the most amazeful sounding drum kit out there, but it sounds good. We already heard it with Saturator in and out. Mirth. This is a collection of, I think they counted it out as 8 bandpass filters. So they will change. Again, there are some sad omissions with this. You hear that it's now only on one channel. And that's on the other channel. So they've A, B, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. So it hard codes a stereo in. Okay, that's cool. But could you not have given us a knob to control that? Or maybe even a knob that goes from nothing to 100%, and then on the other way it goes to minus 100%, so that we can... It just feels like, I know in hardware it's hard to have 1,000 knobs, but here, Dorville is the land of 1,000 knobs. So, 2 tuning, one is for the low end, one is for the high end. Okay, fair enough. There's this LFO. Now you can hear them moving around slightly. My assumption is that they're just moving these bands up and down slightly. Okay, cool. These are cool sorts of devices. I've built a few of these myself over time, and there's definitely elements of this in Hertz multiplier. It doesn't do this, but there are elements of what this does in there. So the fixed filter bank type thing can be exceedingly cool or very uncool, depending upon what you think is happening or trying to achieve. We can mix it, A to B. We can add quite a bit of pedal to it. You can set some sort of envelope following, but again, I'm not getting it. And then we've got this pattern. Anyone who knows Reason's alligator, that's what this is. It's just cycling through what gets turned on and off. One of those things that's going to be useless most of the time. That's interesting. So there's some stuff going in there. You'd want to read the manual to understand. Hopefully it explains how these patterns work and doesn't just do that, oh, there are so many patterns. Yeah, okay, we didn't work that out on our own. Potentially useful, infinitely useless until you find a use. You can sit here doing it with drums and what have you, but personally I would probably spend more time using this with actual instruments. So a melodic instrument, and I would just be tuning these a little bit to sort of go, okay, now I've got a character that really makes this instrument shine, so it's going to sit in the mix far better without need to do like 47 stupid things that just kind of, and then wonder why the mix doesn't work. We can give the sound great character here, and I've made lots of videos on them for myself and for higher hertz. So that's the real idea behind these, far more than making wonky noises, that we can tune our sound. But the fact that this is hard-coded to stereoing them is a bit... I would prefer... Now, does Reaper have one of them here with... It does, so that we could narrow that down. But of course, if we had stereo in the first place, we've now ruined our stereo, but... swings and roundabouts as to what it does. But it's a variant of the fixed filter bank, and overall I think pretty good, but just limited by being stuck in the past. Their famous drive, but maybe we're not driving it hard enough. Samey. Now making our drum kit, yes, there's just a little bit of phase sweepy or something or other happening there, but we've now made our drum kit feel more like it's there, like it's authentic. We've given it a character of its own without getting crazy over the top. In speakers, I may well pull that back a little bit, but that is nice. I do like the way that does sound. Just some slight annoyances that it could have much better functionality, seeing this is all ones and zeros. So kind of a cool device. And then the FreqBox, which honestly I think is the most useless of the lot. There's an oscillator. Oh, this was the first designed without the bobster in the chair, because, well, he wasn't with us anymore, and I don't think they did a very good job. Sorry. I know some people will love this and they'll want to tear their dreadlocks out in frustration that I'm not telling them exactly what they want to hear, but I find it a strange device. But then it's rarely my thing. So we've got this oscillator that just takes the volume or level of whatever it hears and then makes things happen. We can change pitching based upon level, FM. Maybe I'm missing something, but it's pretty mild. For other knobs that go sort of from 0 to almost infinity within a very short throw, this doesn't go very far at all compared to the let's see how nasty we can get. And then the sync button, which is doing synth-style oscillator sync with the incoming signal to this one, and so of course it sounds all kinds of nasty straight up. There's I just have no idea what I would ever use this for. Making annoying mosquito sounds? I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I don't know why we would want that at all. Oh, and at this point I realise that we don't have the one that I really do like. Let's see if we can find him. Developers, M for... All right, I'm back. I don't know why, but for some reason the 102, the ring modulator, didn't show up in Reaper. All of this stuff is under iLok, and, well, iLok can have its moments, but iLok can have its moments. So we've got the same empty power drum kit, different pattern because it's being driven by beat map, and it sounds a lot like this. So our drum kit. So we've got our ability to mix and set the frequency. To set our rate, quite slow. Quite slow is for tremolo, because ring modulators, people seem to have forgotten, ring modulators make great tremolo devices. Put them on an electric piano and they sound really nice. Actually, here's one I did prepare earlier. I was originally going to do this in Reason and found there were some limits. So, pure sound from Purity, and with a bit of the old filter, and in this case phaser, but let's pull in the ring modulator. And that is really, really nice. Depending upon how you mix it is as to how the rate will appear to behave. There's some logic in it. And this is where most people will feel that the Moogerfoogers really shine, in the sense that if they're starting with quite sterile sounds. Actually, I can't use that one because it's just going to kill everything. And it's quite sterile because it's perfect, neat and tidy sample. Pulling this in has given us a far more, well, warm and engaging sound. And that is something that they do well, but to suggest that it's the only way to do it is perhaps, well, gilding the lily. But to be fair, Moog haven't suggested it's the only way to do it. Back to here, let's turn on our... And this does sound good. There is a lot about that I do like. So it's got its limits. It's not the most versatile ring modulator that I've ever heard, but most DSP ring modulators, they might be technically accurate, but they don't always sound great. And I've made some myself which I will use and have used a lot, but there's something about this, it has a unique sound and feel, and that I think is winning. This LFO thing, okay, fair enough. You're going to find your uses for it. But I think overall, that if I were to pick one single device to say, oh, that's probably the one I would buy, it would actually be the 102S, the ring modulator. Seeing we are here, we take Thor and then bring in these devices. We've certainly warmed that up. Ring modulator, phaser, MF. Here how this has given a nice change to the, let's get rid of the chorus. That's a very straight sound, not a bad sound, it's just a very straight sound. Apart from the fact that it's created this annoying stereo thing, it's giving us character. Where that can get a little too heavy in the low mids, or in the mids, we can lighten that up. So we can give ourselves a nice character. And that was the freak thing. Playing different notes, it's not following, so you'd have to somehow send it to follow if you wanted it to make sense. I don't dig it, but fair enough. And something that I did look at was okay, because I'm always going, well, okay, how is this going to give me something significantly better than I could have if we take our low pass and pop this back in. There's not a massive difference, but the Moogerfooger sound is less pristine, and I guess that is what most people are looking for. They're hoping that they are going to get a less clean, clear, perfect DAW sound. But that being the case, there's nothing to stop me in Reason or any other DAW from putting some kind of drive unit between it and the real world. Obviously, it's going to sound the way it sounds and not have the same decisions as the Moog thing. So again, that comes down to personal choice. But in terms of a sound design tool or set of tools, because you've got to buy them all at once, yeah, they're kind of cool. But yeah, they're also prone to being too difficult to use because it's hard to actually read them very clearly. Like, where's that knob? It's a little bit, okay, you've out-clevered yourself. Yes, it looks very moogy and old-fashioned, but what's the point of that? It's not improved the sound. It's just made it a little harder to use. Certain functionality things just make them hard. You saw that with level knobs or amount knobs, I often wanted a little switch to make them easier to use. We know you got the technology because look, you've got switches, including for very similar sorts of things. So that just that lack of thought leaves them coming across as, well, sadly, a wee bit clunky. The CV system is interesting, and kudos for trying to put this together, but random names, geez, you've built a little database, let me name it myself, let me type in drums filter. Fair enough, you may not want to give us as many characters, but again, you could probably move this and make it a lot bigger, even if you verticalized it here or just added a little bit more space. Or what's nicer is rather than leaving it folded up, you've got all this dead space on most of them. Why not let me use all of this? That's what, 32 characters or something or other. So I can write drums, filter, and sent to bass, resonance. I can tell a story there. Technically, it's no different from what you've done, and you don't need to use your random character generator and leave us struggling to find, once we've got quite a few devices in play, which is what you're hoping we're going to do, trying to actually find something like, oh, MF-103 and the that version. It's like, WTF. I then have to go trying to find the at version, whereas if I've typed in something here, if I've typed in go away, there we go, if I've typed in drums filter or something like that, then I've already got some sense of ownership of what it is and where it is, not only because it's named, but because I typed this in. Therefore, my brain has filed a little spreadsheet thing of my own for where that is, what that is. That one, to me, is just going to be a killer for it. Yes, controlling things through this, it will work. I did assign some macros somewhere, and they were, well, okay. But no doubt when it comes in as a proper VST, then we would have CV access to things which we can then assign, but we can't assign them with the waves thing because, well, it breaks. But back to the Moogerfooger thing, my final words are, again, that there are some good things about it. It definitely lets you have something with the Moog name in your door, but does it bring something unassailably Moog? In some cases, yes. In many cases, maybe not so much. That's going to come down to users and what they're looking for. There are some devices that really do seem unique, like the ring modulator, I think is straight away, it's like, oh, that's cool, that's different from everything else I've got. That's wonderful. Things like FreqBox, I'm like, why? The saturation, well, it's okay, but I don't like the fact that it furfies from the beginning. They all seem to add level just to make us immediately think, oh, that's so much better, because, yeah, it's ladder. I could give you a device that does absolutely nothing but pass through, adding 2 dB. You turn it on, you go, oh, that's better. That's just, it shouldn't happen. It happens all, just about everywhere in Dorville, and it shouldn't happen. I've got no problems with, as you add extra drive, not giving perfect leveling, because that gets almost impossible because it's subjective. But where we've got supposedly an even Steven, you must be able to tell, because I can tell that if I wind it back to there, X number of dB, that I get something that's far more even Steven. So you've deliberately, well, messed with Steven. Not super cool. At the price for everything that's there, you have to make your own decision. My decision is going to be like, yeah, I just don't see the value. If I could buy one device and maybe just buy the ring modulator, maybe I'd be getting there. And maybe my liking the ring modulator on its own might then make me more open to the others. As you see, the iLock thing seems to have disappeared something in the install to Reaper. When I first installed them, I thought, oh, I'll do this one in Studio One. I just showed Studio One, blah, 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 and they couldn't find them. Maybe they're there now, but I couldn't find them on first install. I don't know what was wrong there. I really have no idea, but they weren't there. They were there in Reason, and they were there in Reaper. I tried to do stuff in Reason so I could have more control, but I ended up doing it in Reaper, mostly as you see. It made it easier to show the CV thing. All worked out mostly okay, except for the one that didn't show. That's not great practice, and while you might blame that on iLock, you chose iLock. So it creates this kind of difficulty, which goes to my fundamental feeling that most of these suffer from Moog's inability to actually decide that they want to really understand how Dorville works. Dorville doesn't work the same as Hardwareville. Neither is right nor wrong, but Dorville works differently, and if you're going to play, you really want to play Door style rather than hardware style, because then it puts you out of favour with, well, dyed-in-the-wool Doorists like myself, because you've just made your product harder to install, use the cool features, use without being fooled on level, all these sorts of things. So for a company who are pioneers and constantly telling us how important they are as pioneers, and I'm not taking it away from them, Keith Emerson, Gary Newman, get your head in the game here. I think that while you've done cool things in getting them here and an interesting idea in how you've decided to play the CV game in an unfriendly environment, you just not thought it through well enough, especially to justify $250 to get all of these things when there are a lot of other things out there that will do as well, a good enough job to work in a mix. And in terms of a good enough job, when I had my Slim Fatty for a short while, it got used in one piece, which stayed and went on a record. And I popped it up and said to people, "Oh, there's a real Moog in here," and the rest of the sounds are all quite Moogy as well. They're all done with Thor. And I sort of thought, look, I'm going to use this as a test. If this really has, and it's being a pain in the patootie, if this really has some kind of amazefulness that's going to make people go, "Oh, Benedict, we really need to buy your stuff now," then it's going to shine through. And you know what? In all the years where I've shown people this piece and said, "Find me the real Moog," nobody has ever chosen that sound. They might go round 3 or 4 times, but they will always choose a Thor sound as being the real Moog over the real Moog. So the real Moog, didn't have some kind of amazing amazefulness that made it stand head and shoulders above everything else. And I wasn't using much in the way of saturation or whatever back at the time. It was quite clean all round. So in theory, if this Moog has this amazing amazefulness that's hardware that you can only get there, why didn't it shine through? Why did it not come through as being significantly better than the Thor that everybody picked? So yes, full kudos to Moog for their history, for their moving forward, for all the things that they do. But this falls flat on its face to me, but you have to go out there and try it. But please, firstly, make sure that if you're A-Bing, that you're A-Bing even levels. Otherwise, you're just going to go, "Oh, it's louder, it's better." That's a fail. That's being furfied. And really spend some time with them to make sure that they fit in and add to your workflow. Don't just give you an immediate sense of, "Oh, now I sound like..." Because that's not actually making your music any better. You know, if your music is poor and it just, "Oh, now I've got the sound of something or other," it's just going to be cloneware. And there is so much cloneware out there that is just like, eh. This will upset some people, but my daughter has been bringing home Plagiarism at the Disco records and got me to record one of them, so I've spent some time hacking the thing up and preparing it and naming it and MP3ing it and all that kind of stuff. And you know why I call them Plagiarism at the Disco? Because basically every song is got 1 or 2 parts or a large part of the song that's borrowed from somewhere else. Not in a clever, cool way, not in a creative sort of like, "Oh, look, we took this idea and we took it somewhere else," but it's just like, that section there is just, it's Thin Lizzy, Boys Are Back in Town. You haven't done anything with it, you've just gone, "Oh, look, that's a cool riff, we're just going to use it." But thoughtlessly, and it's like song after song after song after song, and it's just like, you haven't really done anything original here at all, and you haven't built anything cool on top of it. You know, there are times where bands have directly done things like Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine. They took a Pet Shop Boys song. I think it might have been Rent, I'm not sure which one, but they took one of their hits and they sung over the top of it. Literally, just played the song and then sung over the top of Neil. And while in theory that is shocking and pathetic, in reality it comes off as really, really cool. Not only are they paying kudos to PSB, but they've added something to that song, even though they did it in a way that in theory is just like, "Oh my, that's really embarrassing." So for yourself, just going, "Look, I've got these things, they've got a Moog badge on them and they look all Moogy, therefore I'm now winning." Don't, because in the real world, you just end up coming off like, well, Plagiarism at the Disco. And you might go, "Oh, but Benedict, they're selling records and you're not." Well, yeah, that there is a point, but how long are they going to be selling records? How long is Keith Emerson and Gary Newman going to be selling records? Keith Emerson, Gary Newman, both using the same tools, but they were never the same as each other in any way, shape or form. You know, what Keith and what Gary did with their Model Ds was just so completely not like each other, even though they both got exactly the same box. All right, That's enough from me. Go out, try this device, or this set of devices, see how you feel about it, but really take your time. My name again, Benedict for Higher Hertz. There's also higherhertz.com, different stream of information there. Go have a look. Whilst you're there, there's also the Hertz delay and the Hertz multiplier, which I mentioned earlier, which are, well, made by me, so they're a different style. My money is where my mouth is. You don't need to spend a cent to get them. Then there's a delay unit and a unit that's specially designed. Watch the video very, very carefully, because I noticed that most people actually, well, not misuse it because it's made to do what they do with it, but most people are missing the real excitement in how it works. Remember, I said it's slightly reminiscent of one of these devices. Which one was it? That one there. Even though it's not fixed filter banks, it will help you change and finesse the tone and also the space of your instrument. Any questions? Not about how to run this, because that's on Moog Music, but any questions about the actual content here, ask them on down below, preferably after hitting subscribify, and engage with us. We love to see that. Have a great day.